At a construction site, a worker sprints over to stop his colleague from digging any deeper. They've uncovered something dangerous in the dirt. Word quickly reaches Chief Superintendent Susanna. The photo from the site looks like an unexploded bomb, and the alarm goes out. Major Will is mid-session at the shooting range when a call pulls him away with news of the find. Looking at the same photo, he identifies it as a 1,000-pound device left over from WWII and calls for an 800-meter perimeter around the site to be sealed off. Police and army units swarm the area and begin clearing everyone out. In an apartment block beside a bank, an officer knocks on a door, gets no answer, and figures the place is empty, but in the shadows inside, someone is moving. Nearby, Rahim is helping his elderly parents out of the building. Once Will reaches the site, he studies the bomb from a distance and orders the liquid pooled around it drained, along with reinforcements built around the foreman's cabin, which will serve as their command post. He then plays his team footage of a device that got away from them 2 years earlier. The blast leveled a large chunk of a town, so caution is essential. A site map reveals a tangle of electrical lines, meaning the whole block will need to go dark. On the street, a resident dodges the officer's warnings to chase after his laptop, forcing the cops to run him down. Soon after, police confirm the evacuation is complete, not realizing that inside the darkened apartment, Corals and his crew are still tucked away. Back at the site, drones lift off and Corporal Martin lowers a hose into the water to begin draining it. The moment the power cuts out, Coral's group slips out of the apartment and hurries to the basement, where they'd stashed tools beforehand. They rig up lighting, and Corals sets a camera at the front entrance before bolting it shut. He then slips out the back, digs through a dumpster for a hidden generator, and feeds its cables down through a pipe into the basement. After placing a second camera near the alley gate, the team starts cutting through the basement wall with power tools. Heading back, Corals gets a brief scare from a fox but shrugs it off. At the police station, Susanna spots movement on a street camera and sends a drone to investigate. It's just the fox. Underground, the crew keeps grinding through layer after layer of wall. Then the bank's alarms start blaring, and an employee tells the officers manning the perimeter that someone should check on it, but they brush him off, explaining alarms are firing everywhere because of the blackout. When the team switches to a louder drill, Corals heads outside to watch the street and monitor the cameras, signaling his crew to pause the drilling whenever a patrol car rolls past. The two haul their gear over to begin work on the bomb itself, while Susanna pulls every patrol car back. Will examines the device and finds a time fuse, confirming it by listening for ticking with a microphone. It could go off anytime within the next 48 hours. They'll need a magnetic clock stopper to disable it. Once it's wired up, the team clears out and the device is triggered, and to everyone's relief, it halts the clock without setting off the bomb. Now they face building a blast wall for a controlled detonation, a job that could take 5 hours. In the basement, the crew's drill hits steel, so they swap it for a welding torch. They soon break through into a bank vault. After spraying over the camera lens, they crack open the boxes inside, hauling out cash and jewelry by the armful. There's gold too, but it's too heavy to carry, so they leave it behind. At the construction site, the soldiers continue raising the wall, until Will notices Martin getting too close to the bomb and sounds a horn to clear everyone back. Martin had spotted patches without rust on the casing, odd for something supposedly 80 years old. Will chalks it up to good preservation and sends the men back to their task. Minutes later, a soldier checking the scanner realizes the bomb is ticking again. The clock stopper has failed. Everyone scrambles for cover while Will grabs his tools. He'll have to drill into the fuse and inject a compound to jam the mechanism. As he begins drilling carefully, an officer back at the station notices a heat signature on the drone's thermal feed that doesn't match the soldier's generator. Susanna orders Will to halt immediately while she sends people to investigate the strange hotspot. Just then, Will spots Martin edging too close again and shouts him back. Martin admits he'd moved the clock stopper himself, reasoning that if it failed, the blame should fall on him. Will tells him no job is worth his life and sends him to take cover with the rest. Then he notices police outside and tells his team to freeze, killing the generator. A patrol car pulls up to the building and tries the door, finds it locked, and the officers decide to search the surrounding area instead, so Corals tells his crew to keep working, just quietly. While Susanna notices the mysterious hotspot has vanished, officers spot Corals in the alley. He bolts, telling his team to move fast, and they scramble to seal up their boxes as quickly as they can. The gate being locked buys them a little time. Back at the construction site, Will says something feels off and tells everyone to cover their ears and strap on their helmets. Moments later, the ticking stops and the bomb detonates, sending a brutal shockwave across the area. The blast topples the drones but stays within the perimeter, sparing the evacuated residents. The whole army unit survives, though Will and one soldier are injured. The officers in the alley go down and call for backup, prompting Susanna to send reinforcements. Now the group splits to execute their escape plan. Corals and Y head to the roof where two drones are waiting. One is malfunctioning, but Corals gets it working again. They load the boxes into the drones' cages and send them off. Officers watching the sky mistake them for police drones. After a short flight, the drones touch down on another rooftop, where a woman collects the boxes. Meanwhile, X and Z head for the street, where they'd already set up fake construction signage around a manhole. As Corals and Y leave the building, an officer abandons his injured partner in the alley to break down a door and get inside. Outside the perimeter, X and Z emerge from a manhole and find their final teammate waiting in a van. Officers descend into the sewers too, forcing Corals and Y to duck into a separate tunnel. At that moment, the woman from the rooftop approaches the van and hands over the boxes. Along with a cake she'd baked for the crew, X pays her and sends her off. With police emerging from the sewer first, the van has no option but to pull away without the other two. Back at the site, Martin pushes to have the bomb's chemical makeup tested, suspecting it isn't actually from WWII. Will looks uneasy and points out that's no longer their call to make, passing the idea along to Susanna for the police forensics team to look into. Right then, the officer inside the building discovers the hole in the basement wall and the obvious robbery. He reports it, and Susanna dispatches a team to hunt for the thieves. When Corals and Y finally climb out of the sewers, they call the others and the van swings back to pick them up. Corals immediately asks to check his box again. At a checkpoint, the crew presents forged paperwork claiming to be workers for London Water, and the officers wave them through. Back at the station, Susanna reviews screenshots of the men who went underground and spots a London Water logo on their uniforms. She has her officers start tracking it down. The checkpoint officers mention a van bearing the same logo that had just passed through. The crew, meanwhile, pulls into a garage where they swap the van's plates and strip the logos from their clothes before getting back on the road and finally clearing the city, a moment they celebrate. As police search the vault, Rahim approaches the checkpoint explaining his family has a flight to catch and needs to retrieve their bags from the apartment. Learning he lives at the crime scene, officers allow the family back in to give a witness statement. At the site, two senior officers confront Will over why he didn't report the bomb's anomalies, bringing up his record of insubordination. Will maintains his focus was on neutralizing the threat and protecting the city. At the station, Susanna questions Rahim's family. He explains that two men in blue overalls had shown up claiming to have landlord paperwork, asking for the basement keys to store some equipment. His father resisted, but Rahim, mindful of how immigrants are expected to comply with anyone who looks official to avoid trouble, handed over the keys, with no idea what they were really planning. Eventually, the thieves arrive at a safe house out in the countryside, where they strip off their clothes to burn them along with the van. Forced to undress, Y and Z reveal they'd each pocketed a few extra items for themselves, including some gold. Corals then finally reveals the contents of the special object, uncut diamonds worth roughly 30 million, which he promises to split evenly. He steps outside afterward to make a phone call. Suddenly, two armed men burst in and order the crew to stand down. Z tries to push back and gets beaten for it. One gunman opens fire, hitting Y, prompting the driver to tackle him. X seizes the moment to flee, with the shooter chasing after him while the other attacker continues working over the driver, where X dodges gunfire by leaping out a window, only to land in the backyard facing Ludo's gun. The rest of the crew gets locked in the garage, cursing Corals, who pays them no attention. Inside, Corals and the newcomers toast to splitting the haul, and it's revealed Ludo is Corals' cousin. Ludo wants to know how he found out about the diamonds, and Corals explains they once belonged to a man he used to work for and now despises. Back then, Corals would fly into conflict zones to retrieve untraceable gemstones, smuggling them out on his person and depositing them into his old boss's account until that boss betrayed him. Now Corals wants payback. When Ludo asks for one diamond, Corals agrees but bristles when Ludo pushes for more. Sensing something's wrong, Ludo decides he wants the arrangement changed entirely, demanding half of everything. The argument escalates until Ludo smashes a tool down on the table, accidentally destroying one of the stones, something that shouldn't be physically possible. Frantic, Corals checks the rest and is stunned to discover they're all fake. He insists he had no idea, but Ludo doesn't buy it and has his men seize him. They pin Corals' hand to the table while Ludo smashes it with a tool, demanding the truth. Corals keeps insisting he's innocent, so Ludo takes the entire stash and has him thrown in his car's trunk, leaving with his men while the original crew remains trapped in the garage. Rahim slips up to the roof and retrieves a bag of real diamonds hidden in a plant pot, then returns to his room and hollows out a suitcase handle to conceal them, reassuring his brother that everything went smoothly. Will, meanwhile, heads home to shower and tend to his wounds, only to get a call from his superiors. Forensics has confirmed the bomb isn't from WWII at all. It's been traced back to the army, and he's ordered to report in the next morning to explain. At the safe house, X manages to saw through his restraints on the edge of the van door. After checking on a badly weakened Y, he frees the rest of the crew. The driver hotwires the van and rams it into the door until it gives way, but it's too late for Y, who dies in Z's arms. X then pulls out his tablet, revealing he'd planted trackers in everyone's clothing, letting him pinpoint Coral's location. The three take 2 cars and head out after him. Back at the Army's storage facility, Martin examines the clock stopper and finds a hidden chip. Proof the device was deliberately sabotaged. At the police station, officers finally trace the apartment's fake paperwork to Coral's, uncovering a long criminal history tied to theft and diamond smuggling. At the airport, Rahim and his family breeze through check-in. On the road, X catches up to Ludo and tries to box him in. Ludo swerves to dodge him, but X's allies come at him from the other side, forcing his car through a fence. X's group then surrounds Ludo's crew, smashing a window to wrestle for a gun. Inside the trunk, Corals hears the music cut off, followed by gunshots. When the trunk finally pops open, Z and the driver yank Corals out. X pulls a bag over his head and starts choking him, until X himself takes a bullet to the neck. After the driver is shot in the leg, he and Z scramble for cover, and Corals bolts toward the shooter, who turns out to be Will. The two have secretly been partners all along, and they escape together. Meanwhile, Susanna finally gets Coral's file and matches his photo to the security footage, confirming his identity. Officers immediately put out alerts to every airport and terminal. After cleaning up at a hotel, Corals makes it to the airport and checks in using a fake passport just ahead of the alert going out. When Martin arrives at the station to tell Susanna about the hidden chip, he also mentions that Will has a reputation for instability following his service in Afghanistan and recognizes Rahim's photo, since Rahim once worked as Will's interpreter there. It was Will who'd arranged for Rahim's entire family to relocate to the US for their safety. Reviewing the files, Susanna realizes Corals was also stationed in Afghanistan, working a gemstone mine, and issues an alert to capture both Will and Rahim. While Will slips out of the country on a private jet, officers race to the airport after spotting Corals, but he evades them and boards his flight successfully. Susanna also learns that Rahim's brother had been the night security guard at the construction site. When she and her team search Will's house, they find a workshop filled with notes on modifying explosives, along with news clippings about a botched attack in Afghanistan that killed several people. In Istanbul, Corals, Will and Rahim sell off the diamonds for an enormous sum and split it 3 ways evenly before parting to begin new lives. 10 years earlier, Corals had been betrayed and kidnapped by his employer. He tried fighting off the soldiers but was quickly overwhelmed and thrown into the back of a truck. Nearby, Will had just struck a peaceful agreement with the locals thanks to Rahim's help. Leaving town, Will and Rahim spotted a vehicle on the road and dove for cover, recognizing it as a sign of nearby hostiles. Will then accidentally triggered a pressure plate, and the surrounding cables revealed they were surrounded by hidden explosives. At that moment, the trucks carrying Coral's group arrived, and the hidden attackers opened fire, destroying one of the vehicles. As the firefight broke out, Corals fled for cover and ran into Will, and the two struck a deal to help one another. Will freed him and sent him to locate the box controlling the explosives, covering him as the enemy fired. Corals dug through the dirt until he found a box rigged with a grenade, and Will talked him through cutting the correct wires. Both Will and Rahim provided cover fire throughout, and once Corals severed the last cable, Will was able to step clear while Rahim took out the remaining attackers. The group barely had a moment to celebrate before the grenade inside the box went off, though they managed to outrun the blast. In the present, Corals uses his share of the money to fulfill a lifelong dream, purchasing a nature reserve in Africa rumored to contain diamonds. Rahim builds a multi-family compound and launches his own company, though it means convincing his relatives to change their names. Will donates the bulk of his money to a charity focused on clearing unexploded ordnance worldwide.